Morning, everyone. I'm State Representative Larry Lambert. I represent the wonderful 7th District. I am here to welcome everyone to our first meeting of Delaware's Justice 40 Oversight Committee. This has been a long, wonderful road, and this is just the beginning. This is an opportunity for Delaware to center our disadvantaged communities, our overburdened communities, in an effort to not only bring forward environmental justice, but remembering that environmental justice is economic justice. We have some wonderful guests with us today. We have some wonderful panelists. And I also want to thank my fellow legislators in the General Assembly for their outstanding efforts over the years. I want to thank our cabinet secretaries for their support as well. As we begin today, I want to share with you what our agenda is. First, we're going to have introductions, some warm introductions, make sure we get to know each other. This is going to be a 15-month journey, and we want to make sure that we're all in alignment and that we're listening. We want to make sure that this is a discourse. This committee is about all of us working together for our disadvantaged communities. And lastly, I want to share that our agenda will expand into some definitions, just so that we're all familiar with the terminologies we'll be using going forward. We're going to talk about some core goals, some overarching steps, and we're also going to get into some norms for our committee. We're going to share some next steps, and we'll also proceed into public comment, because like I said, we want to ensure that we're listening and we're centering our disadvantaged communities. I'm going to start with the PowerPoint, and we can get started. Kindly bear with me. Can everyone see my screen now? Excellent. I want to start with warm introductions. And if everyone could kindly share what they're interested to learn about the Justice 40 today, or if you could share what your goals are for the Justice 40 committee. I'll begin with sharing just a little bit about what Justice 40 is. I do want to save the time for our wonderful guest today, Dr. Cecilia Martinez, the wonderful director of the Center for Environmental Justice from the White House. We want to make sure that we give her an opportunity to give us that grounding, that foundation of how we got here. However, I do want to make sure everyone gets to have their introduction. So like I mentioned, I'm State Representative Larry Lambert. I've worked in the EJ space, the environmental justice space, for years now, and I'm so honored to be here with everyone. I'm really looking forward to hitting the ground running. Next up, our co-chair, Senator Marie Pinckney.
Good morning. Thank you, Representative Lambert. Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be here with you all. I am State Senator Marie Pinckney, representing the 13th District. Looking forward to utilizing this body as an opportunity to get through some of the many hurdles that we know exist when trying to put Black and Brown communities first. And looking forward to elevating the people who have been doing this work for a long time, and utilizing this body to really make sure that we get things done, and that we make sure that we have the funding that is allocated for environmental justice come into Black and Brown communities as a priority for our state. So it is an honor to be here with all of you who have been doing this work a lot longer than I have, and looking forward to working together and getting to know everyone more.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Deborah Heffernan.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Deborah Heffernan. My district is the 6th District, which borders the Delaware River and has many communities that are impacted by environmental issues. I am chair of the Natural Resource Committee at the House and co-chair of the Capital Committee. I am an environmental toxicologist by training, and I've worked in the field of environmental justice for over a decade, and I am happy to be here and thank Representative Larry Lambert and Senator Marie Pinckney for heading this committee and selecting me to serve. Thank you.
Next up, Representative Brian Shu. Next up, we'll proceed to Senator Darius Brown. And pardon me, I don't have visibility on everyone. So as we proceed, kindly unmute your phones and you can feel free to share. And also, if you're here to cover for someone, feel free to unmute your mic and share. Thank you, everyone. Next up, Senator Ernie Lopez.
All right, hi there. I'm Amy. I'm here on behalf of Senator Lopez today.
Thank you for joining, Amy. There may be a little drop of feedback on your mic, but we do appreciate you joining. Thanks so much. Next up, DelDOT Secretary Nicole Majeski.
Hi, everyone. Nicole Majeski on behalf of the Delaware Department of Transportation. We are very happy and honored to be part of this committee. Environmental justice is something that has always been at the forefront of our agency, but we are trying to even rise it up a little bit higher in creating and making sure that we have equity in transportation and that transportation is accessible and equitable to everyone in our state, and also putting more of a highlight on our resiliency and sustainability efforts. And so combining those two and just making sure that, like I said, that we've got transportation that is accessible and equitable to everyone, and that we are taking all of that into consideration and making sure that this is at the forefront of what we do, whether it is in the design phase, in a project, in our transit service, whatever it might be, that this is at the forefront of what the agency is focused on. So we're very happy to be part of this committee and engaging in these conversations.
Thank you, Secretary Majeski. Next up, we have DHS's Associate Deputy Director, Cassandra Codes Johnson.
Thank you, Representative Lambert. Good morning, everyone. I represent the Delaware Division of Public Health under the Department of Health and Social Services. Within the Department of Public Health, we regulate drinking water in the state, and we also administer the state drinking water revolving fund, which is one of the funds that is mentioned in Justice 40. So we really look forward to working with this committee to enhance the work that we already try to do in taking an equitable approach to how those funds and those projects are allocated into our state. And I also have a background in health equity research and practice over 2 decades, and also in understanding how the structural determinants of health have kind of set up some of the inequities in the environmental space that we see right now. So really looking forward to the work of this committee to help allocate those resources better.
Thank you so much, Associate Deputy Director. We appreciate it. Next up, we have Director of the Division of pardon me, we have Director Jeffrey Chris. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Lambert and Co-Chair Pinckney and members of the committee. I'm honored to be part of this Justice 40 Oversight Committee. I am the Director of the Division of Professional Regulation. I'm a member of the Delaware Bar, and prior to coming to state government, I served in municipal government in Sussex County during 2008 with the economic stimulus, and our town worked very hard and was able to get a lot of good grants and put a lot of solar up during that time. So I'm happy to contribute whatever skill set or knowledge I have to the committee to promote the work of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Next up, we have the Delaware State Housing Authority, Director Eugene Young.
Good morning, everyone. Truly a pleasure to be here before you. Special thank you to our chairs, Representative Larry Lambert and co-chair Senator Marie Pinckney. Thank you for all the committee members as well. I see a lot of familiar faces on this Zoom and some new faces I look forward to working with along this process. Environmental justice is an important issue for our state, throughout our state. And I look forward to lending and being involved as much as possible on behalf of Delaware State Housing Authority. So thank you so much. I look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you. Next up, we have DNREC Secretary Sean Garvin.
Thank you, Representative Lambert, Senator Pinckney, the rest of the members of the General Assembly and committee members. It's great to be here with you this morning. Environmental justice is a basic tenet of what we do at DNREC. My prior life before coming to DNREC, I worked for the United States Environmental Protection Agency, in which we focused on environmental justice in a major way. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity, not only for us to engage in the things that we have going on at DNREC, but having so many other people around the table, because when we talk about inequities, when we talk about how environmental justice plays in our communities, it plays into a larger footprint of other things going on in the communities. And so having so many people around the table for us to have good discussions about how do we move forward, how do we address the community needs, how do we make sure that we're getting resources in, but more importantly, or as important, is how are we getting information in and getting information out of the communities that can better help inform us as we make decisions. So I appreciate the leadership of the chair and the co-chair and all the rest of the participants and everybody else who is joining us for this discussion. And I look forward to seeing the progress that we can make here. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Garvin. Next up, we have the Delaware Division of Agriculture Secretary Michael Skuse.
Hi, good morning, Chair Lambert and Co-Chair Pinckney and the rest of the committee members. My name is Nico Brady, representing the Department of Agriculture and Secretary Skuse. I'm the Deputy Principal Assistant and Head of Policy here at the department. We're excited to be a part of this committee. Thank you for having us, and we look forward to engaging with the rest of the committee members on this important topic. We feel that agriculturalists and our farmers and producers here in the state are our premier environmentalists. And also we recognize that certainly the farm workers and the other supports that work in the sector of agriculture are certainly some of the communities that we're talking about here with environmental justice. So we're happy to engage and looking forward to learning more and also sharing more about agriculture in our sector here in Delaware.
Excellent. Thank you, Nico. Next up, we have the Department of Labor Director, Richard Fernandez.
Good morning, Chair Lambert. Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Fernandez, and I'm the Director for the Division of Employment and Training. And this is truly an honor to be a part of this committee. And I really look forward to learning from all of you, using the expertise in this room, using the expertise of this committee to assist our community, more so our job seekers, and see how we could integrate, these program goals within our Department of Labor's programs and services. So once again, I look forward to the collaboration on this very important project. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Fernandez. And our last committee member, we saved the best for last. We have Michelle Roberts from EJHA.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Roberts, and it gives me a joy and a pleasure to be here. Representative Larry Lambert and Co-Chair Pinckney, Senator Pinckney, thank you for this illustrious invitation. I'm the proud daughter of Leslie R. Roberts and Jacqueline Roberts, both graduates of the Howard High School class of 1954. It is a joy, a privilege, and an honor to be here, to be part of this. I am a former environmental scientist and have served in many capacities throughout the state of Delaware and have a long stretch reach in environmental justice, and one of the co-authors of many reports, but one that's near and dear to me being that of the environmental justice report that we put together with the communities, where we addressed the disparate impacts of pollution on health on the Route 9 industrial corridor. In addition to that, just last, I'm equally proud of the body of work that we created along with the Natural Resources Defense Council, and that being called Watered Down Justice. Looking very forward to being.
And I want to thank everyone for their support in this initiative. We are going to skip the next couple of slides, and we're going to dive right into what is the Justice 40 Oversight Committee. So I want to begin with definitions. You've heard some terms, EJ, environmental justice. So I want to make sure that we're all in alignment so that as we proceed forward, we can synergize our energies for collective change. The EPA's definition for environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. And when it comes to what is Justice 40, what we're all here for, I'm going to share with you a little history of Justice 40. When President Biden came into office, one of his earliest executive orders was Executive Order 14008. This was in regards to climate change. And one of the pivotal parts of this executive order was what he referenced as the Justice 40 Initiative. That initiative establishes that when it comes to federal investments going to the 50 states, federal investments dealing with climate change, sea level rise, pollution remediation, green energy, et cetera, that when it comes to those federal investments into the 50 states, that at least 40% of those investment benefits goes to disadvantaged communities. That's what we're here for. For so long, we haven't had an opportunity to take that overarching approach, to make sure we designate our disadvantaged communities, to hear from them, to listen to them. What are their issues? This is an opportunity for us to not only look at some of our issues that have been siloed for so long, issues like the environment, issues like health, issues like transportation, labor, et cetera, agriculture. This is an opportunity for us to look at all of this in a comprehensive way, in a cumulative way. So that's why I'm so glad to have you all here. There will be an opportunity for us to not only unpack some of the bottlenecks and blockades that we've had before, but to make sure that we're working together in a way so that we can map where these funds are going, to make sure that they're going to our overburdened communities. I do want to stop for a moment and also welcome our wonderful community members that are here today. Those are who we started with. And I want to make sure that we, like I said, that we center our communities to make sure that they are where all of this springs from. I want to start with Dr. Carl Turner.
Okay. I'm pleased to be a member of the committee, and I hope to be of service to it. I'm a retired physician, I'm an internist, and I've seen the impacts of environmental injustice, and I'm all for seeing this change.
Thank you so much, Dr. Turner. Next up, we have Maria Payan.
Hi, thank you. I am pleased to be here. My name is Maria Payan. I live in Sussex County, Delaware, and I have been working for, gosh, at least probably 15 years, on these issues, and they're very important issues that I'm very grateful that we're looking into this and taking this seriously. And I'm happy to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Carrie Evelyn Harris.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to have been given the blessing to be on this committee. I am a community organizer throughout the state of Delaware and nationally. And while environmental justice was never my first area, it has touched every piece of my organizing. And I learned it by knocking doors and serving the community and seeing people affected firsthand. When I started to see it, I started to educate myself at the feet of people like Michelle Roberts and Maria Payan and other folks throughout the state and nationally who are have taught me just how EJ touches every part of justice work. And it has changed my direction and how I maneuver in justice work in general. And I'm really excited to participate and give my input and figure out how we can move our communities forward together.
Thank you, Carrie. Next up, we have Ron Handy. Ron Handy might not be able to unmute his phone. And we also have Jeffrey. Hello, Ron, you can go.
Hey, how you doing?
Hello.
It's an honor to be a part of this. I've been dealing with community issues for a very long time, and I see how a lot of times our communities get shortchanged. There may be funding out there or funds that have been accessed, but they never trickle back down to the communities that they're effective. So I'm a strong supporter of this committee and would love to give any of my knowledge, expertise, and insight to make this a very successful committee.
Excellent. Thank you, Ron. We also have Jeffrey Richardson.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and honor to be a part of this great committee. Jeffrey Richardson. I have been active in movement work for about 3 decades in various movements, economic development, peace movement, Free South African movement, but also environmental justice and economic development movements for a number of years. Esteemed people on the committee, some I've worked with before, so again, thank you for this opportunity. I also teach, of course, in environmental justice and on issues of race at the University of Delaware in Africana Studies. Looking forward to learning and just being a part of this, and I thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I believe that covered, hold on, we do have Ms. Dora Williams. Excellent. Thank you for joining, Ms. Williams.
I'd just like to thank you for this opportunity this morning. I'd like to thank God for this opportunity. And I'd like to thank God for all of you, because environmental justice is indeed in the forefront, because it is where people play, raise their children, work, and leave a legacy. So I thank you for this change. And I indeed thank you for the oversight.
Thank you so much, Ms. Williams. And when it comes to our wonderful community members, although they're here today as guests, we want to make sure that we're listening to them and hearing their concerns. Our community members cover Sussex County, Kent County, Newcastle County, and there have been a long list of legacy issues that have impacted our overburdened communities. And that's where I want to proceed into the definition of disadvantaged communities. So these are our communities that have been negatively impacted by the impacts of pollution, by the impacts of poverty. And a lot of our disadvantaged communities are communities of color, disproportionately so. Our communities have not only been impacted by environmental injustice, but through the impacts of redlining, mass incarceration, lack of access to quality healthcare, quality housing, quality transportation. All of these ills have put our communities in a space where not only do we need restorative justice, but we need economic justice. And we can't talk about making communities whole unless we're talking about economic justice as well. And that's where this opportunity in Justice 40 to not only track what we're doing in these communities, but to track the implementation of these benefits to make sure that the economic benefits are coming into our communities. It's imperative that if we're talking about contracting and procurement, we're also talking about procurement for minority-owned businesses, businesses of color. We want to make sure that if we're putting people to work in our communities, it's not just for a 3-month gig, but we're talking about disadvantaged community-owned businesses. That's how we make those funds recycle back into our communities. And that's why we have this list here. This list here is broad, don't get me wrong. We'll be sharing this slide, our PowerPoint slideshow. We'll be sharing it with everyone so that you can take a deeper dive. And all of this information was pulled from the interim implementation guidance for the Justice 40 Oversight Committee. That is a document that is housed at our landing page at the legis.delaware.gov website. So we want to make sure that we just evidence for everybody how the White House and how the Justice 40 Oversight Committee is defining disadvantaged communities. However, there are other ways that we define our disadvantaged communities. Another term you might hear for disadvantaged community is overburdened community, EJ community, environmental justice community, and you'll also hear them referenced as sacrifice zone communities. And that term is particularly sad because for so long, a lot of these communities were redlined into areas where there was also heavy industry. So again, we really appreciate you guys taking a deeper look at what our disadvantaged communities are going through. And we appreciate our community members for also evidencing firsthand what's going on the ground. So let's talk about the benefits of Justice 40. So when we talk about the benefits, these are how these investment benefits can positively impact our overburdened disadvantaged communities. So right here is just a little snapshot. These are some of the issues that have been impacting our communities here in Delaware. As many of you know, just a few weeks ago, we had parts of Wilmington that were underwater. That's why we need to revisit our sustainable water infrastructure and flood mitigation plans. We have issues across Delaware in regards to clean water. Secretary Shoup, Representative Deb Heffernan have been really strong on that. And I want to thank the Speaker of the House, Valerie Longhurst, for her efforts with House Bill 200 this year, the Clean Water Bill that took many years to get passed. And those are the kind of efforts that we want to see going forward with our Justice 40 Oversight Committee. We'll have an opportunity to map the implementation of a lot of these federal programs. And this actually brings me to another definition that I wanted to share with you, and that is a covered program. So when it comes to federal funds coming to our 50 states in regards to climate change, pollution remediation, a lot of these funds are going to be referenced as covered programs. And in that regard, those are the ones that will most likely be passing through our Justice 40 oversight so that we'll be able to map them adequately. Just another few items I wanted to share: clean energy industry job training, household pollution cleanup, lead poisoning remediation. And I wanted to thank the supporters that worked with me on House Bill 222, my lead poisoning bill this year. Again, these are just some of the benefits, and the broader list of benefits can be found on the interim implementation guidance document that is housed on our landing page. Thank you. I do want to pause. There's been a lot of information here, a lot to digest, and this is just an introductory meeting. I want to make sure that this is a dialogue and it's a conversation. If anybody has any questions at any point, feel free to share your input. We want to make sure that this dialogue goes both ways. Feel free to share your hand as we proceed. Are there any questions right now? we will proceed along to the core goals of the Justice 40 Oversight Committee. As we mentioned, this is about transformative justice. This is about centering disadvantaged communities and jumpstarting equitable and just community development. Replacing old lead pipes, supporting jobs, job training, and workforce development. Cleaning up toxic pollution, redeveloping brownfields, creating federally qualified healthcare centers, building energy efficient, affordable housing, community, solar, etc. There's a lot of opportunity coming right down the road. And I also want to thank someone that played a very pivotal role in how we got here today. That is State Senator Gilda Cobb Hunter of South Carolina. Her model legislation in South Carolina was the first Justice 40 Oversight Committee legislation at the state level. However, she wasn't able to quite get it over the hump and get it passed in South Carolina. And she reached out to me, and I was able to work with Senator Pinckney. Thanks again for your support. And that's how we were able to bring the Justice 40 Oversight Committee to Delaware. With unanimous bipartisan support, we were able to get House Concurrent Resolution 40 through both chambers of our General Assembly in the last days of the session. That's how we got here. And this effort is not just in Delaware, this effort extends across the country. In regards to our core mission for the Justice 40 Oversight Committee, it's a commitment to securing environmental justice and spurring economic opportunity for disadvantaged communities that have been historically marginalized and overburdened by pollution and underinvestment in housing, transportation, water, and wastewater infrastructure, agriculture, and healthcare. I would like to get into the 5 overarching steps of Justice 40. This is for us to have that comprehensive, wider look of what exactly is going on here and how we plan to execute it. And as we dive into these 5 steps, I want to let everyone know that throughout all of these steps, we are working closely with our impacted communities. That's why they're here today as guests. And that's why going forward, we want to have some meetings in our disadvantaged communities. We plan on having county-specific meetings that are set up by our environmental justice advocates, that are set up by our communities. We want to make sure we're meeting people where they're at, and we're not talking to disadvantaged communities, we're talking with disadvantaged communities. The first overarching step to Justice 40 is determining communities that are disadvantaged. We do have current mapping systems that are used by DNREC. We have some mapping systems that are used by the Department of Health, and we'll dive into those in future meetings. But what we want to make sure is that there's an opportunity to kind of synergize some of those mapping tools, some of these mapping opportunities. Also, the White House is working on a Justice 40 mapping tool, and in future meetings, we'll be able to discuss that as well. We're really uniquely positioned in a place where not only are we working on how to designate our communities that have been overburdened by the impacts of, some of the poultry farms in Sussex that have been impacted by some of the, the ethylene oxide plant here in Newcastle County, but issues even involving PFAS that Senator Pinckney has worked on and Carrie Evelyn Harris has worked on. We want to make sure that we're able to really pinpoint a lot of the issues that our communities have been having. When we get into the issues around health, that goes deep. That goes even into lead poisoning. That goes into the social determinants of health, as was mentioned earlier, even into ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. We need to take our best shot at mapping a lot of these issues so that we can recognize where our disadvantaged communities are. And we're also able to leverage the most recent census tract data to ensure that that mapping is as accurate as possible. Our second step, we need to identify the benefits of covered programs. Our last slide was just a little snapshot in regards to some of the benefits that we see, but there's a significant list of covered programs, and in future meetings, what we would like for is for all of our secretaries, our department secretaries, as well as our community members to take a look at some of the covered programs that are detailed in the interim implementation guidance, and to take a look at what are some of those benefits. Which brings us to step 3. Verify how covered programs distribute those benefits to disadvantaged communities. We want to look at how these federal investments, these federal programs, we want to look at how they can benefit our disadvantaged communities. Our communities have solutions. They know what they need. They know what the ills are. And that's why we are really fired up and looking forward to our upcoming listening sessions, because we need to know what are the benefits of these programs and how we can potentially link them to our disadvantaged communities. Step 4, tracking the implementation of benefits, including but not limited to dollars spent. So when we look at an equitable and just community, we have to also look at, what does success look like? When we invest, when we look at the investment benefits coming to our communities, we need to decide, we need to be able to track what exactly is going on, how these benefits are being implemented. And that's why I also mentioned earlier that we also need to look at procurement and contracting. I know that the Department of Transportation has a lovely program called DBE Academy, and hopefully at future meetings we'll be able to dive into that a little bit. But we want to make sure that we're tracking those benefits to make sure that they're actually making it to where they claim to be destined to go. And that brings us to part 5, calculating and reporting on the 40% goal of the Justice 40 initiative. Our goal is at least 40% of the investment benefits going to our disadvantaged communities. So we want to make sure that when we provide our final findings and recommendations, no later than December 31st of 2022, in accordance with our House concurrent resolution, we want to make sure that we were able to calculate and map how we proceeded, and to see if we were able to reach our goal, our sustainable goal. And those are the 5 overarching steps to Justice 40. Like I said, there's a lot here, and I want to take a quick pause to see if anybody has any questions or input in regards to the 5 overarching steps. We have Representative Shoup joining us. Thank you for joining us today, sir. If you could kindly introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you very much. I apologize for being late. My name is Brian Shoup. I'm a state representative for the 36th district, which is the Milford area. I'm also a small business owner, actually 2 small businesses in the Milford area, and former mayor of Milford as well. I'm very excited to be part of this. I've been known in my area to help with environmental issues, be a champion for environmental issues like clean water, also lead remediation in the city of Milford as well, and for helping with disadvantaged communities. We had a huge process in the city of Milford for, believe it or not, we did not have any rental codes for over 100 years in the city of Milford, and that was something that we implemented, proactive city rental codes inside of our municipality. So I'm very excited to be here, and any way that I can help, I'm more than happy to do so.
Thanks for joining, Representative Shoup. We appreciate it. And also, if anybody didn't have an opportunity to introduce themselves, feel free to raise your hand so we can provide you that opportunity. Thank you so much. And if there's no more questions, like I said, feel free to raise your hand anytime. Thank you. All right, everyone, we want to get into some of the norms and the goals of the Justice 40 Oversight Committee. We want to make sure that we're in alignment going forward, and that we're able to, make sure that we're proceeding in a way that is helpful to all involved. It looks like we do have our special guest joining us. So this is right on time. We will be revisiting the norms for our committee coming up. Right now, we want to make way for Dr. Cecilia Martinez, who is the Senior Director for Environmental Justice of the White House's Council on Environmental Quality. She's also the co-founder and executive director of the Center for Earth, Energy, and Democracy. She's one of Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People, and she was nominated by New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. Dr. Cecilia Martinez, are you here with us?
I am here, Representative Lambert. Pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you for joining us today. We were going through the Justice 40 Oversight Committee here for Delaware, and we are so honored to have you with us. Thank you for your endless work, your decades of service in the EJ space across our nation and internationally. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to you sharing with us, what is Justice 40 and how we got here.
Of course, very happy to. And thank you so much for this opportunity to talk with you all. I'm sure Representative Lambert has shared with you that I do have very deep connections to the state of Delaware. I am a graduate of the University of Delaware. That's where I got my doctorate. And my youngest son was born in Wilmington. So we are very connected to the first state. And it's really a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. What I've been asked to do here today is to give you a briefing of a bit of what is going on with Justice 40. And I do have a slideshow. Hopefully I can get that up and running just to help guide some of the conversation. Please feel free to ask questions as I'm presenting. We are, as you know, in the middle of a very transformative initiative with President Biden's agenda. So let me get this slide going. Oh, I can't get it going because I can't share the screen. I don't know, Larry, if there's a way.
Hi, tech team. Could you give Cecilia the ability to share, please?
Hey, Dr. Martinez, I just made you a co-host. You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, great. Perfect. All right. Can you all see this? Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So let me start by just going over, oops, sorry about that. Going over what I think we all know was the origination of the Justice 40 initiative. First of all, let me say that candidate Joe Biden met with approximately 160 or more environmental justice groups from across the country. These were core listening sessions that happened all across the United States, including in Indian country, to get ideas from environmental justice communities and others, justice stakeholder allies, about what are some critical initiatives that could the administration could move forward. And Justice 40, as you all know, both has an origin in New York, but was also cited by environmental justice communities as an important way in which we might start thinking about how the federal government can address the historic underinvestment that has happened in certain communities across the country. And so through Executive Order 14008, he established the Justice 40 initiative that certain federal investments would go that 40% of the certain federal investments of the overall benefits of those investments would go to disadvantaged communities. Importantly, Justice 40, the buckets of the sectors or the issue areas that Justice 40 applies to is the following. Those are climate, clean energy and energy efficiency, clean transit, affordable and sustainable housing, training and workforce development, of course, remediation and reduction of legacy pollution, and the development of critical clean water infrastructure. So Justice 40, for the first time, applies a very intersectoral approach towards addressing the underinvestment that has happened historically. The idea, of course, is that as we move forward, both in current appropriated dollars, but as we move forward with the president's budget, that 40% of the investment benefits in these areas will go to quote unquote disadvantaged communities. Now, we have heard loud and clear from communities that they do not like the term disadvantaged. That is what is in the executive order, and we are working to make sure to redefine or at least modify that term to be more appropriate and in line with what communities as well as states and localities want. The other part of Justice 40 is that not only must it reflect existing authorities that the agencies may possess, but in addition, the goal is to assess programs across the federal government that may need additional legislation in order for them to fall under Justice 40. Some of those, as you all know, for example, in the Department of Transportation, there may not be the ability to actually target 40% to quote unquote disadvantaged communities. And so what do we need as a federal government to be able to come in line with Justice 40 overall? Thus far, and I want to share with you what we have been doing around Justice 40. Obviously, as you all know, this is a very transformative initiative. And so as a result, we need to start at the ground level with some really good data collection and assessment from agencies in terms of how they fit, what is the baseline that we're working from, so that we can continue to identify what the challenges, but also what the opportunities are for implementation. And so towards that end, the Office of Management and Budget issued a budget data request to all agencies, requesting information from them on current programs that they thought might fall into Justice 40. In addition, any other information such as their appropriations, any kinds of issues that they could see that might be problematic in terms of complying with Justice 40 as a goal. We had collected that information, and in addition to that, we have had consultations, extensive consultations with each agency. We sent an additional information request to them, asking them their ideas about what constitutes a disadvantaged community for the purposes of their agency programs, as well as how they are even beginning to think about the calculation of investment benefits. We also requested from the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Committee their recommendations on Justice 40. Now, let me just point out this WEJAC, the acronym is WEJAC. This is the first time an Environmental Justice Federal Advisory Committee has been established for this issue area at the White House level. I think you have from Delaware, Michelle Roberts, who was born and raised in Delaware, is a member of the WEJAC committee. That WEJAC committee was established in March, and within 2 months provided over 90 pages of recommendations, some of which were directly applicable to Justice 40. In addition, we have been conducting extensive stakeholder outreach and reviewing the published research on climate, economic, and environmental justice so that that can inform how we implement Justice 40. Just to give you an idea of what we are seeing as the applicable types of federal investments for Justice 40, this is the range of buckets. Obviously, federal grants and procurement spending. This is very important, particularly as the federal government starts to re-engage and redevelop its sustainability plans. So making sure that Justice 40 and how we think about federal investments in its own operations and maintenance fits with Justice 40 initiative is important. Financing, including credits, loans, and guarantees. Federal staffing costs, although we will be looking to very much assess this to make sure that it falls in line with the goals. In other words, that staff that actually provide direct technical assistance to communities, whether it be in the form of assisting in terms of grant applications or building capacity on the ground, those federal staffing costs can go, or we are thinking should go, to just under the Justice 40 formula. Of course, the direct financial benefits, including the provision of goods and services, and also any additional federal investments under covered programs that benefit overburdened and underserved communities. So we are We are in the process of collecting all that information from agencies, getting a sense of what is the range of programs, what are the specific programs that they believe would be covered under Justice 40. Of course, some very key elements of Justice 40 are things that we need to continue to develop, and we would very much welcome your all thoughts in terms of what is the best way to do this. Justice 40, the executive order, simply identifies that the goal is to have the investments benefits go to disadvantaged communities. The next question, of course, is how do we define those communities? What criteria do we use to specifically identify which communities will fall under the Justice 40 goal? That is perhaps one of the most significant set of activities that we're undertaking at the moment. As you can imagine, this is a very large and tall order. How do we identify communities in a comparative way that is true, reliable, valid, particularly the very different cost of living, the very different issue areas that are across regions, including urban versus rural, southeast versus northwest. All of those things come into play to make sure that we are targeting where these benefits need to go. The second key thing that we need to do is we need to calculate, what do we mean by investment benefits? How are we going to hold agencies accountable to be able to monitor and evaluate what constitutes a benefit when they are applying their programs to Justice 40? What we are doing in the meantime is we do have a set of pilot programs, and you can find the pilot program list under the interim guidance that has been issued to agencies on the OMB website. But these pilot programs are intended to give us some degree of learning regarding implementation. Those pilot programs fall into a range. Programs that are very easy to implement into Justice 40, programs that might need to have tweaks in order to be implemented, and then programs that actually will have challenges and barriers, no matter what those challenges and barriers are. They could be legislative, they could be other things. And we specifically chose that continuum because we want to use the pilot programs as a learning experience. And so as the next steps move forward, we will, these pilot programs are reporting on their progress, including how they're identifying disadvantaged communities, how they're calculating benefits, how they are developing community and stakeholder engagement plans, a very critical component that we are emphasizing for Justice 40, that in order for communities, for these to be of value to communities, the communities themselves need to be a part of the process, and they need to be at the table informing how Justice 40 will be implemented. So the pilot programs are reporting on this. The next steps for us is to continue. We have issued the interim guidance to agencies to use all the information that we are getting back from that interim guidance as data to then develop the final guidance for agencies on how they will implement Justice 40. We also need to publish a climate and economic justice screening tool that goes back to that first point about which communities will fall under. The climate and economic justice screening tool will be the tool that identifies what a disadvantaged community is. And so we will need to launch that screening tool. And then, of course, is also what we don't want to let go of, and that is, how do we evaluate how Justice 40 is doing? We cannot just simply initiate develop the initiative without monitoring and evaluation. And so part of Executive Order 14008, what it does is it establishes an agency scorecard and performance metrics for environmental justice across the federal family. What we are doing is looking at Justice 40 as a key component in those performance metrics and that scorecard. And so that is also something that will need to be stood up next year. Hopefully then we will have a baseline from which to evaluate the following years as to how effective Justice 40 is being, also identifying where some of the barriers are for full achievement, and being able to tweak Justice 40 to meet its goal. And so I will stop there, Representative Lambert, and see if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martinez. This is outstanding. We already had one question come in. Will we have will we get a copy of that slideshow?
Unfortunately, that I can get that. I get approval and try and send it to you. Right now it's draft and deliberative, but I will seek approval of what I can share with you and then send that to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I have another quick question. I don't see any other. If there are any other hands, just kindly let me know. But again, thank you again for your efforts. Like this is exemplary. We really appreciate it. And this is our first meeting, so we really appreciate you helping us to kick it off in a very positive way. In regards to that geospatial climate and economic justice screening tool that you all are developing and working on, firstly, do you guys have a tentative target date of when it might be done? And secondarily, considering that we're working on, what is basically one of the most important parts, which is kind of mapping and determining disadvantaged communities here in Delaware, how might you suggest we proceed so that we can synergize our efforts along with your geospatial screening tool that you guys are developing?
Well, first of all, I would love to have conversations with you about how you're doing that. We have been having in-depth conversations obviously with California. They've developed their CalEnviro screen with New York, with other states as well. So I would love to have that direct one-on-one conversation with you all to see how you, what are the critical indicators that you regard as important for identifying communities in Delaware, and that's part of this process. We know that states and local governments have to be a critical partner in this. So the more we can align on this, we want the climate and economic justice screening tool to reflect the reality that you know as well, both at the legislative level, but also the community level. So I would love to have that conversation with whoever is working on that.
That's exactly what we were looking for. Do you think that when we have our next monthly meeting, that maybe we could meet with someone from your team and that could be the main discussion, the main topic?
Absolutely. We can, we have several folks. We have the U.S. Digital Service that is helping us with this. So we can bring that team together here with you all. Just a note is we are looking at other, we know that this is going to be a development process, right? We know that what we're doing is truly historic in that some of these initiatives are the first ever efforts. And we know that we're not going to get it absolutely correct and absolutely right the first time around. So what we also are looking at is, look, how can we stand this up in the best way possible right now, with the idea that this is a continually evolving, improving product. And so as we both do this first phase of launch, but also just importantly, we need to keep this conversation going in order for the continued improvement of the tool and the other parts of the initiative. Can I just say that I am, and I know at the White House, the other executive offices, that we are absolutely thrilled about the work that you all are doing in Delaware, that you have established this oversight process. You are a leader in this, and we have been sharing that across all the executive offices of the president. We are hoping to highlight you. I am just thrilled and have been sharing all the work that you have been doing, because one of the things that we have heard from the community directly is how are we going to hold our states and our local governments accountable to the initiative? And I think you're demonstrating very clearly how that can happen. So you're answering two things. One, how can we be effective as governments and aligned governments? And number two, how can we be responsive to the communities themselves that are asking for this accountability? So I just want to give you incredible kudos, and I'm following your work constantly in terms of seeing how you're moving forward on this.
Thank you so much. We appreciate those kind words, and it's really the wonderful people on this call. For years, so many of us have been dedicated to this environmental justice, and as you advised, environmental justice isn't a destination, it's a journey. And we're so honored and happy to be taking this journey with you. And we want to work closely with you guys. I think that we might be helping to kind of invent the model that might be able to be duplicated in other states. So what we could use, and we respect your time. We know you have to get ready and go, but what we could use from you is if your team could find a date in maybe late October, if possible, that works for your team members, maybe a couple of dates that work for the US Digital Service, that works for your team, so that we could do that deeper dive into that the mapping and determining disadvantaged communities here in Delaware. We do have a question from Representative Brian Shoup, but if you have to go, we do respect that. Thank you.
Sure, I'm happy to answer his question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Martinez. Great presentation, and I was thinking about how do we identify communities within our state, and I don't think I don't have the answer to that, obviously, but I think one of the things that interests me is there are two places in our state that I think are great data collection centers for us. Obviously, they do a lot of great services, but at the core, they're also data collection centers, and that's the Department of Labor and our state services. And I think that may be able to give us a chance if we look at those two places and say, hey, what kind of data do you collect when you help our families here in Delaware? What kind of demographics, what kind of geography, what other types of information comes in through that portal that we could possibly use to kind of identify some of these underserved communities? And then also just through setting up some sort of process, kind of like here we have community transportation funds, which are, come directly through our legislators where they identify places that may not be through kind of the data we're collecting as well. And that's driven right from the community. So we will hear about infrastructure or roads from our community come to us, and then we bring it to the table. So I think it's got to be twofold. It's got to come from the data centers that we already have, kind of the traditional models, but it's also got to come within our communities that say, yes, there are also other pockets that may not be identified by these traditional models as well. And I obviously it's not a complete science, as you probably have learned as well. But those are just my thoughts on it, and maybe through stages and some others, we can start to work through as this committee to help, flesh that out a little bit more.
It's a great, those are great ideas. I've been writing them down, and I will definitely bring them forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Michelle Roberts.
Dr. Martinez, thank you so very much for joining us. Just very quickly, we do have a great deal of you, as you may know from being here, being in Delaware. Formerly, we have a great deal of background data from community voices and stories that date back to our, what we call in the down in Sussex, the strong communities. And that's what led for us to do a great deal of the demographic data work that we've been working with communities across the state. So are you saying that, like, with respect to reports such as that, in addition to like data from US Digital Services and others, these are the types of information that you're looking for to be able to make that full story, if you will, to speak to these legacies? Just checking.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. That's a really important question. So there's two dimensions to this screening tool that I think we have to really look at. One is how to use the screening tool as defining what a quote unquote disadvantaged community is for the purposes of resource allocation, for the purposes of federal program funding. That particular purpose has very high legal requirements. For example, we cannot use race at the current time for the purposes of the tool in that way. So we have that particular function that we have to figure out. In addition, though, you raise a very important piece, and that is beyond the beyond the function of resource allocation and defining disadvantaged communities, how can this tool become a robust portal for all the different types of data and information that are relevant both to states, cities, and communities about understanding the reality of their condition? And so that also is something that we're looking to in phase 2. What are the types of data that need to go in there? Both quantitative as well as qualitative data that needs to be included. And how do we ground truth that? How do we engage the federal government in a process of actually engaging with communities, for example, around the reports that you all have done, making sure that that the federal government is developing a portal for this. My personal dream, this is only a personal dream, in no way does it represent the Council on Environmental Quality or the executive offices of the president. My personal dream is that we have an environmental justice website and portal of the magnitude like the Energy Information Administration's portal. And that in that portal, we have a range of data that can be of use to communities, whether it's around soil, pollution, air quality, chemical industries, petrochemical facilities, the range of issues that are of importance to environmental justice communities.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. We share that goal. That would be a lovely goal someday. Next up, we have DNREC Secretary Sean Garvin. And Dr. Martinez, let us know if you have to go early. Thank you.
I can take one more if that works for y'all.
Very generous of you. Thank you.
Welcome, Dr. Martinez. It's great to have you here. There's been a couple of mentions of connections back to Delaware. I'm going to do the connection from Delaware back to the federal government. I was with EPA Region 3, RA, when we were developing EJ Screen, and we've been having a lot of conversations with our counterparts in Region 3 as we're looking to take EJ Screen, and we're in the process of developing a Delaware tool, which will be a little bit more detailed and more fine based on the information that we have in the state. And we've been working with our colleagues at DHSS to make sure we figure out how to populate that, both in identifying the communities, disadvantaged communities or underserved communities, as well as the environmental and health information that we have for those communities that will help us not only as we talk about this effort as in looking at resources and how we get those into addressing issues in those communities, but how we can really look at the public health and environmental issues that we need to be active on. And I know there's a part later on on the agenda, so I won't get into it now on some of the things that are already ongoing. But it is an extremely important tool, and look forward to continuing to partner with our colleagues at the federal government, but particularly as we look at how do we make tools really state specific and not necessarily the larger overlay that understandably is what the tools at the federal level are. So appreciate Dr. Martinez, all the things that you're doing, and look forward to working with you moving into the future.
Absolutely, of course. And I think you've hit on a really important piece, and that is that, as you well know, is in the time of working with EJ Screen, that the challenge is to find the right environmental indicators. So for example, EJ Screen, about 9 of 11 of the indicators are relating to air quality. And so what we have been using is using EJ Screen as a foundation and a base point from which to assess what else do we need to do to get a screening tool that encompasses the full range of environmental risks and environmental hazards, as well as obviously not just the exposures, but the health risks. And those are 2 different measures. Also in ensuring that we are, as I mentioned with Michelle's comment, that we are ground truthing it as well. So we are trying to pay particular attention to making sure that whatever outputs get made by the screening tool at least in some form, we will have a process to be able to do some ground truthing with it. We're also in preliminary conversations, and I don't want to, very preliminary conversations, but I think it'll be an important thing is working with the National Academies of Sciences to do a full report on what does it mean to develop and how do you develop proper indicators for a screening tool that will address the environmental justice realities. And what we're looking for that in that report to be a groundbreaking report that will be the baseline from which federal agencies have to act upon. And of course, bringing the best scientific research analysis to that, as well as, bringing the community perspective to it. So completely agree with you. It's a tall order, but, transformational work is always a tall order. And that's quite honestly, the only reason I joined the Biden administration is because what I saw are these initiatives are truly about making sure that we make a difference in the community, and hopefully we can do that.
Great, thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martinez. This was exceptional. We really appreciate it. On behalf of all the panelists, on behalf of everybody watching at home on Zoom, we really appreciate the work you've done, your leadership, your expertise, your spirit. And thank you for this extra time as well. We know you have to go, and we really look forward to connecting, potentially even on our next call. So kindly share with us, get with your team, and kindly share with us a few times that work in late October for your team members. And we look forward to picking up where we left off. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Have a great day. That was a great discussion, everyone. This is what we're talking about. This is what we're looking for. Jeffrey Richardson.
Thank you very much. So this is very exciting and tremendous presentation made by Dr. Martinez. And I think this whole discussion about intersectionality between the issues of economic justice, racial justice, and environmental justice at a practical level. Having been in the solar and renewable energy industry myself for many years and still am, this is one of the missing factors almost across the board. We're looking at economic development, the measurement, the tracking, all those things are very important. I have some stories I can talk about the solar industry, good, bad, etc. But I'm really so thankful for what is happening here and being able to track this at the local level, because now we're talking about, again, where resources go. So this is a tremendously important, and thank you, Dr. Martinez. I know she's gone already. Send her a spirit. Thanks, and thank you for this whole process here. So really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Michelle Roberts.
Yeah, just thank you. And just to piggyback on what Jeffrey said, and so happy to see you, Jeffrey, on this committee and this Zoom here today. Because, when we think about areas, and that's what led us to write the report about where we worked with the communities on the Route 9, it's not just about pollution exposure, but it is how we move beyond in our physical, social, and economic conditions, right? And the health of our totality, if you will. And we know and knew the history of how our communities were created, and we need to honor and understand where that history initiated itself, but where we have the moral and political courage to move it beyond itself, right? And so this is where we were seeking to come from with the many bodies of works that we've done with our communities on this demographic data. It is not a sense of finger pointing, but more of how can we move beyond this condition? And then I'll just leave it here. This gives us joy with this particular piece, especially with Justice 40, because one of the things that we've constantly spoke and have talked about in the Delaware with our alignment partners of Delaware Concerned Residents and Jeffrey Richardson and others is how we take those. I'm a former environmental scientist, and so I've been in and out of those industries along the Route 9, but some of those that have been shut down or done away with, like Mr. Cordell Randolph used to say of Randolph Refuge Service back in Southbridge, is how can we take some of those facilities that have been abandoned, remediate those facilities, teaching our young people from our communities to provide them with the effective learning and skills they need, right? In addition to that, rehabilitating some of these abandoned facilities and buildings into, as for example, Jeffrey's business, manufacturing our own solar panels in Southbridge, creating that of a collective, therefore funding going into that of the community and looking at enhancing the bond rating of of their area, and in addition to that, the education, health, and well-being. It is a conundrum of disparity, and that's why I'll leave it here in where my family lineage is, because I look at even in the health conditions of our elders today and the flooding that took place last a couple of weeks ago with Ida. Unfortunately, the state was not prepared, and we have got to prepare ourselves to make sure that we are addressing the issues that have been left behind, those being the issues of failed infrastructure based on whatever the reason, systemic racism, what have you, but we have to have that opportunity to move that forward. And that's what, thank you, Senator Marie Pinckney and Representative Lambert, for creating this process to help us begin to think about how we can provide that for our communities across the state of Delaware.
Thank you so much, Michelle and Jeffrey. That solution-based approach is what we're looking for. We do have to get ready and touch base on our next steps going forward. But we want to hear from Secretary Garvin before we proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative, and I'll be really quick. One, I just want to let everybody know I've got a hard stop at 11:45 because I have another event I have to go to, but there are many DENREC folks who are part of the attendees who will continue to listen, and we'll follow up from there. But I just wanted to follow up on something that Jeffrey and Michelle said, which I think is a very valuable point and focus. And Michelle said it at the end that the state wasn't ready for Ida, and that really goes back to and when I refer to the state, I talk about all of us, not just state government. And part of the climate action plan that the governor's climate action plan that will be coming out hopefully very soon starts to create a roadmap for that. But I do suggest to you, Representative Lambert, and you, Senator Pinckney, and the rest of the committee is figuring out how we're engaging county and local and municipal governments in this conversation, because a lot of the solutions they're going to have to be a big part of. It's not going to be something that is driven totally by the state, and so figuring out a way in which we can engage those political folks into this conversation, I think is critical, as well as some of the areas when we talk about brownfields, which is an important thing to us, and brownfields used to be returning the property back into the same use it was before, and brownfields has evolved very far from that. But you also get into the private sector when you're talking about what's going to happen with that property when somebody owns it. It's not government owned and controlled. So I think there's a lot of other pieces to this that over the next period of time, as we're developing the report, that we're going to have to engage in this conversation. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Secretary Garvin. Outstanding point. And we want to add that to our one of our agendas going forward. How do we involve stakeholders at the county and the local municipal level? And Representative Shoup, with your experience as mayor of Milford, we could use your support around that too. So going forward, I want to put that out there, make sure everyone is also thinking about that as well. Next up, we have Nico Brady.
Thank you. And I'll just piggyback a little bit off of Sean, Secretary Garvin's point in terms of incorporating or engaging at the local level. I think the offices of planning is probably a really good start. You know, when we're talking about comprehensive planning and we're talking about zoning and ordinances and those kinds of things, that's happening at the local level, and your planning offices are really at the forefront of that.
Excellent point. We need that feedback. Thank you so much. If I could just kindly punch through our last few items on our PowerPoint, we'll proceed to our public comment space. One moment, kindly bear with me. All right, thanks for your patience, everyone. In regards to the quorum, to hold the task force meeting, we must have a quorum present. Currently, there are 14 appointed members of the task force, which means to hold a meeting, there must be a minimum of 8 members of the task force present. And again, we appreciate everyone's great attendance today. This number will change with the appointment of more members as needed by the chair, and a notification will go out to all serving task force members upon the appointment of a new member. In regards to the schedule, it'll be held on a monthly basis, except for when we're in session. Those are the months of January through June 30th. When we're in session, we're probably only going to meet twice, and that'll be during those session breaks. All members will be notified of meeting dates at the first available moment. In regards to our final report, the final goal of the Justice 40 Oversight Committee is to draft a final report by no later than December 31st, 2022, compiling all recommendations of the committee to be presented to the General Assembly. It'll also be presented to the governor, the director and librarian of the Division of Research of the Legislative Council, the White House Council on Environmental Quality, and the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. Next steps. Our next steps are community meetings. We're really fired up. We're looking forward to that. Some of our wonderful community leaders on the call today are already working on some of our next steps to securing those meetings. We want to have those meetings in the evenings, as a lot of our overburdened communities, disadvantaged communities, are working communities. So again, we want to do these meetings in a way that accommodates their needs, that makes it so a space where they can be comfortable. Dates and locations for community meetings are currently being determined and will be announced to the members as soon as the dates and locations are made. In regards to the community members, you guys are a key part of this, and we appreciate your efforts. Specific members are currently being determined by the chair, and there is a goal of having a community member from each county, as well as an additional one from the city of Wilmington. Current department actions on environmental justice. So we've already we've already began the dialogue. We really appreciate these items that we've discussed so far, including items such as what Secretary Garvin mentioned, as well as our next meeting, which we look forward to being with the U.S. Digital Service, as well as Cecilia's team, Dr. Martinez's team, pardon me. And we look forward to being able to convene. And I want to make sure everyone knows that when it comes to our next upcoming meeting, please bring your ideas, please bring your input. Please take a look at the interim implementation guidance that's been shared with everyone. And we want to make sure that as we look forward to determining and mapping disadvantaged communities, that we're bringing all of the questions, all of the data points, all of the information and the tools that you currently use, the tools that we could use going forward. And that's where we currently stand. I do want to open things up to the group as we do want to have space for any final Any final comments before we proceed over to the public comment space? All right, everyone. We're going to we're going to proceed to the public comment space. To make a public comment, select the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen, and you will be chosen in order to make a public comment or to ask a question. All attendees have 2 minutes to make a public comment. If you are unable to make a comment at this time, you may also email any comments or questions to justice40@delaware.gov or to my legislative aide, Dylan Tepper. His email is dylan.tepper@delaware.gov.
So at the current moment, we don't seem to have anyone who's raised their hands yet. We'll give them a few moments for that. But if you would like to speak and you're an attendee, you can just use the raise hand feature below. All right, Representative Lambert, doesn't seem like we have any public comments, so I'll pass back to you.
Thank you so much. And to our Delawareans, our brothers and sisters at home that are watching, this was a lot of information to digest. Any question you ask is always appropriate. We're here for you. And also, like I said, there is an opportunity for you to email in any comments that you have going forward at justice40@delaware.gov. I do want to give an extra shout out to someone that has been very pivotal behind the scenes in helping for Delaware to be the first state to bring forward the Justice 40 Oversight Committee at the state level, and that's Harold Mitchell. The work that he's done over the decades with Regenesis as a representative in South Carolina, it just goes to show the partnerships between states. And in closing, are there any final questions or comments from anybody in our committee? Senator Pinckney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank all of our amazing guests that we have here today. Hearing for Dr. Martinez and her saying, that the White House is looking to us for this to set the tone for what Justice 40 really can do was impactful. I think it puts a pretty heavy expectation on the work that we're going to do throughout the country for what Black and Brown communities deserve when it comes to environmental justice. It gives us a real opportunity to make significant and necessary change. I didn't share at the beginning, but I don't have a background in environmental justice at all. I'm a social worker by trade and never really saw myself in office, let alone being an advocate for environmental justice. But I got interested in it. But number one, if you know me at all, I get interested in things from podcasts. Like I'm a sick podcast listener. It's all, if you see me with headphones in my ears, it's like not ever music, it's a podcast or an audiobook. But one of my favorite podcasts is Into America with Tremaine Lee. And one of the episodes that he was sharing, he was talking about Cancer Alley in Louisiana. And I remember just like vividly like being in my basement and working out and like hearing this and just being infuriated, like, how can this be happening? We have to save Louisiana, like little to my lack of knowledge. We're like, wait, it's Route 9, it's 13, it's in our backyard, it's not so far away, right? Like we have Cancer Alley here. And we don't have enough of these conversations, I believe, at our level. And I think that's a responsibility on us in government. I think that we're having these conversations in so many different silos that the work that all of the amazing organizations that are here this morning and community members are doing aren't getting highlighted in the legislation that is coming from the General Assembly. And I think this body has just the greatest opportunity to make significant change in that. And I just really, really appreciate all of the advocates here and all of the organizations and department heads. It shows your true dedication to Black and Brown communities. And I cannot express my gratitude enough for that. And I really look forward to what we're going to get done together.
Thank you so much, Senator Pinckney. I share all of those words and I couldn't have said it better. That's exactly where we're at, everyone. Like I said, this was an introductory meeting. This is us breaking bread, getting together. This is only the beginning. There is no silver bullet. We will not solve this overnight. And although this group will not fix everything, we will try our best to improve things. Thank you so much for joining our Justice for the Oversight Committee. There's a lot of wonderful work ahead of us, a lot of hard work ahead of us, but we're in this together. Thank you to the agency heads. Thank you to my fellow legislators in the General Assembly. And thank you to our community advocates. And also thank you to everyone at home. There are some wonderful community advocates, some wonderful community leaders that didn't make it this far because of the impacts of environmental injustice. We stand on your shoulders. We honor you. And let's keep working hard, everyone. Let's stay in touch. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Stay safe and well, everyone.
Too.
Take care, everyone. Job well done, Representative Lambert. Senator Pinckney.
Yes. Thank you,
Director.
Senator
We appreciate
Pinckney.
your effort.
Thank you, Representative Lambert.